I apologize, had to do our TV stuff, but here we are, a couple of minutes late, better than never. This is Coffee Talk on a Monday morning as we are watching the very latest data coming in all morning long on Hurricane Ian. That's right, it was upgraded to hurricane intensity. Here's a look at the very latest, moving to the northwest at 14 miles an hour, the 8 a.m. intermediate advisory, showing winds of 75, but look at that burst of convection out near the Caymans. This storm system is rapidly intensifying as it works closer and closer to Cuba. Yep, just as we had been concerned about, this is absolutely playing out. Here's a bit of a wider perspective just to give you an idea of the size. This thing is almost the entire size of the Caribbean Sea. There's a lot to talk about on Coffee Talk here, and I'm going to be answering questions. I'm going to be giving you just as much data as I possibly can. So let's start with the forecast positioning and the path, okay? All right, here you go. So there it is now. Over the course of today, it continues to intensify. We think through this afternoon it becomes a Category 2 storm. We think as early as tonight or tomorrow morning it becomes a Category 3 storm, crossing over Cuba with winds of 120 miles an hour. That part of the forecast very much dialed in. Okay, after that, here's Wednesday, 2 a.m., 140 mile per hour winds. Then it starts to turn to the right, okay? Making it closer and closer to the Tampa Bay area. Category 3 storm. After that, makes landfall, starts to get weaker, sheared apart, and kind of lifts to the north Friday into Saturday, and so on, okay? So that's the forecast cone as it stands. And obviously, you know, for us, let's just look at the zoomed in cone. This is the part of the cone that is most, at least, applicable to Central Florida, okay? So landfall around Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, Thursday, and then lingering through Friday. And, you know, there's a great concern for the overall forward motion here because, as I'll show you, the models are not moving this very fast at all. You see Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The cone is still very wide over us, and it's not because we don't know where it's going to go. I mean, we're getting a better idea of it, but rather it's because the cone is kind of overlapping on top of itself, thus keeping it wider than it perhaps normally would be. It's kind of one of those weird playing of the scenarios.
Change your batteries real quick for your mic.
I'll do it for the next show. Thank you, buddy. All right, here's a look at the advisories as of the 5 o'clock update. We have hurricane watches posted for Hillsborough, Manatee, Sarasota counties, and then to the south, tropical storm watches posted for Charlotte and Lee counties. Mainland Monroe, at least the coastal communities, under tropical storm watches. A watch is different than a warning. A watch means that tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 48 hours, okay? If you look down to the Dry Tortugas, Key West, the lower Keys, those are tropical storm warnings. That means that tropical storm conditions expected within 36 hours. And then looking to the western tip there of Cuba, they're under a hurricane warning, meaning that hurricane conditions are expected within 36 hours. So, you know, just based on this alone, if we look at our local advisories, none of Central Florida under any kind of hurricane or tropical storm advisories, though later today, more than likely, I would think 5 p.m., perhaps even later, if this graphic decides it wants to load. I would think 5 p.m. or later for maybe tropical storm advisories to start getting posted. Maybe even hurricane advisories out west. All right, so computer models are kind of starting to key in on this little bit by little bit. We had said that's what we wanted. We wanted the computer models to start keying in. And I think that they're starting to do just that little by little. So here's a look at our side-by-side model comparison. And let's just stop this. That's 5 p.m. on Tuesday. The European model on the left, the GFS model on the right, both showing a storm. Now the GFS is definitely stronger. The GFS is definitely a stronger scenario there. All right? Watch how through Wednesday early morning, both computer models unified, having a storm system just off of the coastline, right? Here's 8 p.m. Wednesday. You've got the European scraping up against the west coast, the GFS keeping it a little further offshore. There's 4:35 a.m. Thursday, still very near the Tampa Bay area. Now notice that the European is like center of circulation right off of Pinellas, whereas the GFS is kind of right off of Sarasota, Bradenton area. The European kind of lifting into the Big Bend, the GFS being a little slower. You can see there, European already ashore, that's 12:30 p.m. Friday. The GFS still offshore, and then finally coming in. So we're starting to get some consistency in terms of what our models are giving us, at least in pathways. We know that it's going to be a close pass. At some point, it's either going to go into the Big Bend or a little closer to us, and that's where we're going to have to make fine-tuning tweaks, okay? Fine-tuning tweaks to overall impacts here locally. All right, so when we just look at what kind of is on the docket here, tonight, the storm system expected to continue to strengthen. Looking ahead to tomorrow, some of those outer bands do look to start moving into our area, okay? And then Wednesday into Thursday, that's when the main impacts shall be. Now, this is where it's kind of important to just look at the different elements of the impacts, because what are the impacts? If it stays offshore, we would be talking about peripheral impacts, gusty winds in tropical downpours, tornado threat, big rains. If it comes ashore, you know what? There's a graphic. Why have I not showed this one? There are still two distinct possibilities here, okay? All right, so for us, the westerly track, which would keep it a little further off the shoreline, would be a bit of a weaker system for us. Okay, it would be a little bit of a later landfall, but more importantly, it would be slightly lower direct impacts for Central Florida. Okay? If it comes in a little further east, making landfall, and I'll show you, our Futurecast model has consistently been pointing this out. But if that plays out, the easterly track, it would be a bit stronger, we think, because it makes landfall before it hits the shear. It would obviously make that landfall sooner, but it would be more of a direct impact for us. So when we've talked so much here recently about this, you know, there have been people on Coffee Talk here that have said things like, this is Charlie 2.0, right? And there have been people saying that. The one point I want to make is that every storm is different, right? The east track, if it were to stay on the right side, the east track would be most like Charlie, in that it would come in and it would move further inland. But every storm is different, and based on that, you can't just take, oh, this is what happened in Charlie to what happened here. Amy says, so much background noise. Yeah, I'm in a television newscast right now. We're in a television studio, so my apologies. All right? Every hurricane is different, Michael says. No two storms are the same. They may be similar, but not exactly the same. Exactly. This is pattern-wise playing out very similar to Charlie, but Charlie moved through very quickly, and this one is not going to move through very quickly. This is going to be a much slower one. And that is definitely the concern, as we highlighted on kind of the global models, okay? I forget who it was, but somebody did ask to look at Futurecast, and that was the next thing I wanted to show. Because, you know, the one thing that's interesting is that the global models are starting to key in on the forecast. Our Futurecast, though, interestingly enough, has been very consistent on this storm system making landfall and staying on the right side of the forecast envelope. So here, let's just stop this. This is a look at 6:30 tomorrow morning. So if you want to get feisty, let's just go to 8 o'clock tomorrow. Let's call Coffee Talk, all right? So when we talk tomorrow, according to our forecast, the center of circulation will be an exposed eye just north of Cuba, okay? At that point in time, it will be a major hurricane on the right side of the forecast cone, okay? And I've got the forecast cone there just to give you perspective on what our Futurecast is going with. Again, this is our in-house model. There's 2 p.m. Tuesday. Let's go a little further. So there's 4 p.m. Tuesday, so just off to the west of the dry Tortugas, okay? So we're getting into the Florida Straits at this point. Let's continue, all right? Then we're approaching Naples. There's 8 p.m. on Tuesday. There's 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday, right? There, 3:30 a.m. Wednesday, okay? Getting very, very close. Again, notice this is on the right side. It has been hanging, and it has been consistent. Our Futurecast model has been consistently hanging on the right side of that forecast envelope, okay? With that, the wraparound wind is particularly concerning because the Gulf Coast is so flat bathymetry-wise. The water, the continental shelf, so to speak, the bathymetry, the underwater topography underneath the Gulf of Mexico there is very shallow. It is particularly prone to storm surge flooding, as you'll see as we work through time here, okay? According to Futurecast, by 11 a.m., a little ahead of the Hurricane Center's timing, landfall somewhere around Sarasota, Bradenton, or even right in, according to our Futurecast model, New Tampa, the southern tip there of Pinellas County would be in the eye, 2 p.m. Wednesday. Again, right side of the guidance and a little ahead of the guidance in terms of timing, okay? Wednesday, 5 p.m., nasty weather. There's 9 p.m. Wednesday, nasty weather. Then the center of circulation through early Thursday is moving into our area. So our model is going a little faster than the hurricane center. Our model is kind of a little to the right of it. But you get the idea, and this graphic, this screen right here, to me, okay? Let me do this. Give me a few seconds. I want to, of course I can't. What I wanted to show is just based on this, okay, the potential is there for the storm system to hug the right side. It could also hug the left side, but I want to point out, if you're in the cone, which is you and I, if you're in the cone, the potential is there to see a hurricane, okay? So it's not yet time to just calm down. I've seen so many people posting things like, oh, cool, we dodged another bullet. Okay? As a matter of fact, as the cone continues to narrow, with us still in it, I would go ahead and say that our threats are actually increasing. Okay? So keep that in mind. Tornadoes, high winds, flooding. I would say if I were to categorize these, and maybe I need to retool this graphic. I didn't initially make this, but if I were to retool this graphic, I would say flooding is my absolute biggest concern. Tornadoes and gusty winds would be second. When you think of the gusty winds, you think of hurricane, that's steady. If the core comes through here, that's certainly a possibility. If the core stays off to our west, it would be just feeder bands with these damaging winds, okay? So we're not quite to the point where, we can dial in. I know that a lot of people are going to want to talk county by county. We're not quite there yet. We're getting there. Our forecast confidence has gone from low to medium, so that's good. We're starting to dial in on things, okay? Perfect. But in terms of county by county information, I see, what about this county? What about this location? I'm not going to give it to you. Meteorologically, I can't give you effective information yet. No evacuation yet? No, but I would be willing to bet that parts of the Sun Coast, Pinellas County, Frank, Hillsborough County, I would be willing to bet in low-lying areas that those will be starting soon, which I know my brother Frank's in here. I have a guest room, Frank, for you and Crystal, okay? So I can text you after coffee talk. My brother Frank lives in Pinellas County. I have a guest room. You and Crystal can come, okay? and I won't lose power. All right, so I would be willing to guess that at some point in the not so distant future, we're going to be looking at evacuations on the West Coast. When our news director asked us about impacts over on the West Coast, where should we send our crew over on the West Coast, I said, I think Tampa's going to have a significant storm surge. There are storm surge advisories posted for, and actually we need to update this map, Kellyanne, because it includes Tampa. Yeah, it includes Tampa now. Storm surge watches. Give me a second. I'll fix the map and then I'll show it. Okay, here's the storm surge map. Storm surge watch is posted for Pinellas, Hillsborough County, including Tampa Bay, all the way down the shoreline. Okay, big concern there. Lynn says, Eric says he has a guest room, everyone. Yes, that's true. Okay, all right, so what are we looking at for storm surge? Because in our area, in Central Florida, the WESH 2 CW18 coverage area, we are not anticipating storm surge. But look at that storm surge on the West Coast, the Naples, Mainland Monroe, Collier County areas. You know, you're looking at a 3 to 6 foot rise in water. You get up toward Sanibel Island, Captiva Island, Pine Island, Charlotte Harbor, Tampa Bay. Now you're starting to talk a 6 to 8 foot water rise. And it's not just 6 to 8 foot waves. I mean, take sea level, go up 6 to 8 feet, okay? And you're talking breaking waves, okay? On top of that, all right? So based on the timing, hurricane watches are already posted. I would expect low-lying areas in Hillsborough County very soon to start evacuating, okay? Storm surge, that's 6 to 8 foot water rise, okay? Over sea level. So think about, if you've ever been to Clearwater Beach, I see Tracy's asking about Pasco County. Weird Pasco isn't in this. It's getting there. We're working up the shoreline. We're not there yet. We're working up the shoreline. So little by little, this is being added, okay? But, it's 6 to 8, think of how flat the beaches are there. Frankie, I see you there. Frankie, I know you're leaving, but you heard me. If you need to evacuate, I've got space for you. 6 to 8 foot rise of sea level, and then in addition to that, the breaking waves. And then in addition to that, Angie, the tides playing, okay? All right, so that's what we're looking at. For us locally, again, there are no advisories posted. There is a hurricane watch posted, though, for Hillsborough, Pinellas County, and to the county line. So far, nothing further north, but we're going to be working that further north. Okay, Crystal, I hear you. Okay, very good. We're going to be working that further and further to the north, okay? All right, that said, let me just pause. There's plenty more I could run my mouth about, and I will, but I want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And we'll look at models and all that as well. But let's take some questions here, and we'll let the questions kind of guide the rest of Coffee Talk, because that's what I think this forum is best at, okay? Tanya, power outages in Seminole, I would think yes, because of the feeder bands. I would say that everybody in Central Florida has the potential, yeah. It all depends on exact paths, right? But there's definitely a possibility. Jackie, do you think that there will be a need to board up windows in Flagler County? I don't think so. I always tell everybody, if you're particularly concerned, everybody has unique circumstances. If you're particularly concerned, there's nothing to stop you from doing it, okay? But Danielle, all the questions are going to be people asking for their neighborhood. You're right. Dawn, Eric, it's me again. You said I should ask again, so here I am, really hoping that you can answer me, ask my question. Maybe it isn't answerable. All right, let me remind, I live in Tarpon Springs. Worst case scenario. Okay, so you're asking about sea level, and you're asking about storm surge. I can't wrap my head around the potential of 11 feet. So, you're talking about how far back you are. Think about sea level, calm sea level. You need to start thinking about how high, how many feet up from sea level would impact you, Dawn. Okay, because right now, when we talk about that storm surge flooding, in the Bay Area, which includes you in Pinellas, you're talking a 6 to 8 foot increase. Okay? So that's what you need to be thinking about. Denny says, y'all stop scaring the Florida newbies. We're just going to be fine. Listen, you're on a weather Facebook broadcast. Don't be mad when we talk about weather, Denny. And if I'm scaring anybody, then I'm doing the exact opposite of my goal. Because to me, knowledge is power. To me, working together to understand things is going to help you not be scared. But that's cool. You can move along. You stumbled on a weather Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter broadcast. Okay? Here, by the way, while we're talking, here's when the most likely arrival of tropical storm conditions begins. Think of this as kind of a loose idea of when the storm onsets, okay? Kayla, do you think the airports will close? I had this question brought up yesterday. I saw somebody out, took the kids after work to the science center, and my response was, it's not as much will the airports close as much as it's do the airlines just preemptively cancel flights so that they don't have airplanes in the storm's path, so that they don't have to worry about it, so that they can proactively change flights around, okay? Beth, if it moves more east, will it hit Disney? Yes, it could. It could go east of Disney. It could go west of Disney. Worst case for Brevard County, Donna, I would say hurricane force wind gusts if it makes a hard right turn. Teresa, I love how everybody asks their locations. I spent like 5 minutes saying I can't give you exact locations yet. We're clarifying, we're keying in, okay? Brian, I have to work at my job overnight both Tuesday night into Wednesday morning and also Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Both nights I have to be at work at midnight, but I have to drive from Citra to 484 by I-75 at about 10-ish. What's the drive weather going to be? The struggle is we're still a little early to get into specifics. Okay, we're keying into that. But we're just a little too early to key into specifics. I would say Wednesday night, Thursday night, Brian, those are going to be rough conditions. Whether it's squally, rainy weather, or whether you're talking about hurricane conditions. The difference between squally weather and hurricane conditions is the difference between this going a little to the right or a little not to the right. Like let's just look at, and I'm going to put the spaghetti plots in there in addition to the path, and it says 8 a.m. Saturday. That's the data through 8 a.m. Saturday, okay? Okay, so the model plots are seemingly wanting to go a little more to the right. So I would suspect that the Hurricane Center would probably, start shifting their cone a little bit. But if you think about it, if it follows the more, I'm going to just zoom this in here, okay? Stand by, close. It's a lot of graphics, so you just kind of have to let me work through this. All right. So if the storm system, let's just talk about scenarios. Everybody's asking about their local spot. If the storm system goes right down the middle of the cone, okay, then we would just be talking outer feeder bands. Daniel's asking, what is a feeder band? The worst of the weather is right in the center of the storm. Outside of it are kind of these blossomy bands of rain, and they're big, torrential downpours, okay? Based on that line, we would be getting torrential downpours, some pockets of gusty winds, and that would be it. The worst of the weather would be on the Gulf Coast. We would have the threat of tornadoes in those feeder bands, but that's where we're at, okay? If the storm system does like what Futurecast says, it would hang on the right side of that. If that's the case, the core of the storm moves over us, then that would be more like a Charlie type impact in that we would be getting hurricane, tropical storm force winds, okay? So, you know, that's why at this point, we have an idea, right? We have an idea of what it's doing, but we've not gotten into exacts. And so that's why we can't give you the specifics just yet. We just can't. There's like a million comments, a million people are asking. And I apologize, everybody. We're not there. I'm confident that this cone is a good one. I'm confident that for Central Florida, this is a potential big impactor. This is also a potential big impactor for just the Gulf Coast. But we need to continue to prepare until we know we're not going to be heavily impacted. Micah, so daughter being at college at UCF, she should find a place and hunker down Wednesday and Thursday. I would say that we're probably going to get into a situation where schools are going to be closing. Bethune-Cookman University over in Volusia County has already basically told people that they're going to have to, you know, classes are being deferred, etc., so that, you know, everybody can get to safety as the storm approaches. I will say, as I'm talking to you, just so that you know, Rosen hotels are reducing their pricing ahead of the hurricane, okay? They call it distress rates to help people evacuate safely. So that's really great. Harris Rosen, local hotelier, has many properties here in Central Florida that range now, distress rates as he calls it, run from $69 a night to $119 a night. So it's really wonderful that they're doing that for folks that are going to need to evacuate. But yeah, you know, I would imagine that later today we start hearing about evacuations on the Gulf Coast. For us, I would imagine that through the day today into tomorrow, as we continue to fine-tune the spaghetti model plots, as we continue to fine-tune the global models, we'll get a better idea of exact paths, exact impacts, and we'll soon be able to get into county by county. Think about it, it's Monday. You know, this thing is not expected to be really moving through our area until like Wednesday, Thursday, okay? So based on that, we're still pretty early in the game, and it's important to remember that. All right? Bo's asking about possible rainfall totals. Some models are saying 1 foot to 2 feet of rain over the course of the week. Daniel says, you're one of the only news guys not trying to make people freak out. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I cannot stand hype, and so you're not going to get that from me. All right, scrolling through many questions. I apologize. There's so many. Tristan, Eric, cruise on Thursday from Port Canaveral. Do you think the port will close? I don't make those decisions, but I can tell you a hurricane will be in the area, Tristan, on Thursday. So fill in the blanks, right? Yeah. I don't know if the port's going to close, but a hurricane will be in the vicinity. Lieben, how is Futurecast different than the main tropical models? Every model has its own math equation, and that's where it comes into play. Is, you know, you like looking at different models just to give different processes, right? All right. Will Brevard still get heavy downpours? South Florida? I don't know what the question, but yes, Brevard should expect some heavy downpours. Do we have an idea of the wind field? So, Jeremy, we've got a loose wind field idea. Here, let me share it with you. Okay, and again, highly subject to change, okay? But based on kind of current thinking, that's a look at, you know, there's 4 p.m. Wednesday, okay? And you can see the tropical storm force wind field, hurricane force wind, you know, and again, this is just kind of the area of concern. At this rate, based on the current thinking, the hurricane force winds, at least sustained, would stay along the Gulf Coast. Tropical storm would wander into our area, and then you can see as it kind of works its way in, we would be concerned with Marion and Sumter counties. But this is kind of based on where we're at currently. this will change. Speed increase, decrease, this all plays into it. So, you know, we're definitely not keyed into the local impacts, but we're working on it. And I think that with every passing model run, we're going to be getting more and more information that's going to be helping us more and more. But to me, the one focal point, and I think that this is the greatest graphic, the threats are increasing for us here in Central Florida. And the storm, its overall intensity is also increasing. All right? I live in Brevard. Should I board up? If you're concerned, I'm never going to say no, but I would say I don't think that it is a necessary thing in Brevard County, okay? All right, flying through questions. Your comments are coming in way faster than I can read them, so I do apologize, okay? Linda, can we see the current spaghetti models? Yes. Just a moment, let me pull it up. So here's the most recent computer forecast models. And it's a tough call, man, because on the one hand, you know, it's like if it was coming in easily, then it's an easy one. But because it's like scraping up, all you need is a little bit of a right-hand turn and it comes inland. So it's not the easiest, honest to goodness, Linda, it is not the easiest forecast. Man, you and James Spann are always in such agreement. Well, thank you. Hey, that's quite good company. I'll take that and I appreciate that. What do you mean scaring the newbies? Amanda says. Eric gives us current info on what's going on. I would say it's easy for people to say those types of things. It's easy. You know, but to me, if I'm honest with you, I'd rather give you every piece of information. I'd rather give you every piece of information that you ask for. I'd rather give you every piece of information you didn't ask for. Because I want to inform you. I want to teach you how to track these. That way, every time it comes, you're a little bit stronger. You're a little bit smarter, right? That's so important to me. So important to me. Colleen, I find it ridiculous that people expect you to target their specific area. You put the maps up for a reason. I mean, I get it. Maybe they're just joining us. But at the end of the day, we're just not there yet. You know, you can see there's the models are going from like the Big Bend all the way to the Suncoast. If we could dial that down a little bit, you know, I mean, like, what's the distance there? Let's look. That's 220 miles. You know, that's the difference between a hurricane in Orlando and not a hurricane in Orlando. I mean, seriously, that's what you're looking at. So we're working on it. And anybody that gives you the specificity of, I saw one forecaster had wrote rainfall potential 4 inches to 24 inches. Well, what good does that do? Right? Like, we don't know what you know, share and show transparency on what you don't know. I think that that's very important. Becky, all the people freaking out. Well, we just have to calm everybody down. Okay, that's all. We have to calm people down, and I take that part of my job very, very seriously. Why has this storm been so difficult to predict compared to most? I think that every storm has its own unique, predictable, its own unique problems, we'll say, right? I think every storm system has that. Some are easier to predict than others, but every storm has its thing. Okay? Flying to Orlando from New Jersey Wednesday morning. Will I be able to get there? I don't know. I would say probably not. Wednesday is going to be what I think is some of the worst weather for Central Florida, right? This graphic, I think, gives you the overall idea. Wednesday morning is fine, but you know, this is when the weather starts to go downhill. All right? Mike says, kind of looks like a hybrid of Charlie and Matthew, how it looks like it's hugging the coast. You can make comparisons to everything, right? Like, you just can. But I would say every storm is different. Let's just track everything together. How wide is the storm? I've been seeing other people saying 450 miles. Here, let's look. I mean, it's because it took longer to develop, it's definitely gotten sizable. I mean, that's 400 miles there. 404 miles. So I mean, it's definitely a sizable storm system. It's intensifying. That burst of convection at the center of circulation is telling me its rapid intensification continues. Brittany's asking about Seminole County. We're not there yet. I could tell you my concern: flooding rains, tropical storm force wind gusts, could get into hurricane force wind gusts if it turns a little more to the right, and there is a threat of tornadoes. If it follows the published path from the National Hurricane Center, which is a possibility, then that puts us into the right front quadrant of the storm system. And the right front quadrant essentially says you've got, of the whole storm, that right quadrant, the right side of its forward momentum, has the highest threat for tornadoes. Okay? So for us, this is in addition to just kind of the peripheral events. This is an additional element, right? A higher threat for tornadoes. Christy, no one has mentioned Flagler. We're right on the line. It's not time yet. It's just not time yet. We'll get there, but it's not time yet. Okay? All right. So can you please show us Futurecast? The problem is our Futurecast, we're still you have to remember, we're still so early in this. This is as far out as our Futurecast goes, okay? 11 p.m. Wednesday. Now, our Futurecast does have the storm system essentially going right through Central Florida. So let's do this. Give me 2 seconds. You know what I'm going to do? It's on the outside of it, but I can at least dial it up and give you what I can give you. But it only goes out so far. Let's see. Standby 1. When is the next update? Melanie's asking, when is the next update from the National Hurricane Center? The 11 o'clock advisory will be the next update. Okay. Do that, do that. Stand by. 48. So it goes 72. I'm just programming our extended Futurecast. All right. Okay. So here's our Futurecast, okay? And let's just take a look at this together. All right. So here's Tuesday night, and just as Kellyanne and I have been saying, some of those feeder bands starting to move through town. Now this is going to be subject to change as long as you know that. Then by Wednesday, early morning, we're starting to get some of the crummier weather. That's a pretty potent band of weather, and I could tell you, just from memory, Charlie, interestingly enough, had a similar band go through and prompted tornado warnings. So don't be surprised if Wednesday morning, we're watching a line of severe weather marching through Central Florida, okay? And that's out ahead of the storm itself. By 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Wednesday, Futurecast is showing the storm system itself racing in. Look at that. That's 4:30 p.m., that's 5 p.m. Wednesday. Core of the storm system marching through. There's 8 p.m. Wednesday, core of the storm system. That would actually, if I'm honest with you, and I'm always going to be honest with you, that to me is kind of a worst case scenario, being that it would bring the core of the storm right through the Orlando metro area. Okay, now that's one model run, or I should say one model. Our Futurecast has been consistent on this solution, but our in-house model is giving us kind of the worst case scenario. I don't trust it any more than any other model, okay, because a lot of you are asking what's the better model. It's not a matter of that at all. Our Futurecast is saying that that the core of the storm system comes in around Sarasota, Bradenton, and then the core of the storm kind of works right up like I-75, between I-75 and I-4, and then sluggishly kind of works its way into our northern areas through like Thursday, 2 a.m., and then finally escapes. Okay, so that's our Futurecast, and I'll show it to you just on a wider angle, and you can kind of see that landfall. Let me back it up a little bit. There's the landfall there. It would be like, according to our Futurecast, it would be right around like Sarasota. Okay, so very interesting. It's very interesting to look at the data. Your boxed coffee looks like boxed wine. Oh God, I need to make it through the day. It's not boxed wine. All right, Eric is the Obi-Wan Kenobi of weather. Well, thank you for that, Dan, over on YouTube. Thank you for that. All right, let's see here. So, has there been small shift to the right again? Cheryl again? Yeah, I mean, you know, the Europeans seem pretty consistent. The GFS shifted a little east, but it really slowed down. So yeah, that's the issue there. Elliot says, I was here for Irma in 2017. It hit Pine Hills hard. Oh, I remember. I think that was the first hurricane, or not the first. Correction. I think that was the last hurricane that I was here covering, right? Because we haven't had one really hit us since Irma. We've had a few close calls, but Irma was the last, you know, pretty decent one. Barbara, so what does this mean for the Volusia Coast? So when you look at it, I think that the best way to think about it is we are now honing down to two scenarios. And after Coffee Talk, I'll dial this down even more. But the idea here is you've got scenario one, the western track. Give me 2 seconds. Let me dial it down right now for us, based on all the new model data that I'm seeing. 2 seconds, everybody. Okay, there's that. Okay, all right, here you go. So this is my updated scenarios. While we're talking, this is what's so great about Coffee Talk, is it gives me the opportunity to kind of gauge what you're asking and what you're wanting, and to clarify that. So here's kind of where we're at. This is the last piece of our puzzle. Does it take a little bit more of the westerly track, staying out to sea, or does it take a little more of the easterly track and come ashore? That plays in significantly. If it takes the westerly track, staying just off the shoreline, riding right up the coastline, for us it means more rainfall, right? It just means it's going to be more of a rain event, gusty downpours. But we do keep into that tornado threat. If it takes that easterly track coming ashore, moving right over top of us, then hurricane conditions are possible. We could certainly be talking about widespread winds running 50, 60, 70 miles per hour, okay? All right? Could certainly be tracking those isolated tornadoes. And flooding would certainly be likely. So this is kind of the two scenario system. Once we get here, once we key into which scenario plays out, that's the last piece of our weather puzzle. That's when we are all on board, okay? That's when we're all on board. All right? When does the Hurricane Center start doing intermediate advisories? We're there, Jeremy. Yeah, we've got the 8 o'clock intermediate. We're already there. Do these bands have a lot of lightning, Patty's asking? Tropical systems typically do not have a lot of lightning. They are typically more just rich moisture, just soupy atmosphere. Lots of rain. Torrential downpours. Oliver, since a lot of folks think you're a fortune teller, can I get the next set of lottery numbers? Probably be easier than answering the specific county forecasts. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oliver. I appreciate it. Yeah. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Oh, the Euro 6Z's out? You know, let's take a look at, we haven't even looked at the raw models yet, so let's do that. All right, so here's the GFS 6Z. Let's just start there, okay? And what I'm plotting is winds. But you know what, let's just plot pressure just for the sake of surface. Let's do this view, this. Okay, all right, let's just do pressure. That way we can track it, all right? So here's the storm system. That's Thursday morning at 12Z, okay? Slow, oh my gosh. And then getting into the Big Bend, that's the GFS. Let's take a look at the European. All right. I have not seen the European yet, so let's take a look at this. Rolling through. The European, wow, a 952 low versus a 972 low. So right off the bat, the European is a little further to the left, a little further offshore, but is deeper. Interesting. The European is stronger, but further west.
That's new.
That's new. That's why you can't pay attention. Like, that's the current European. Let's go back a run. Yeah. So that's the 0. That's the 6Z. So the most recent run of the European has gone to the left a little bit. So, you know, that's why when everybody's asking county by county, it's like, no, we just cannot do that. This is where we're at, okay? I think that this graphic is going to be the very important scenario here for us, okay? Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it. All right, questions. Let's see here. Galen, Eric, I didn't know you're on YouTube. We're everywhere. We're like Visa. We're everywhere you want to be. Let's see here. Marion County requests permission to leave the state. I think we could all agree on that. Yeah. I live in an older mobile home in Wildwood right off the turnpike. Should I think about going to a friend's? You know, Monique, while it's too early to tell, if that's on your mind, then it's never a bad idea. If there's, you know, if you're laying in bed at night and there's a concern, it takes nothing to call the friend and to head that direction, right? So I would always say, if you're ever, it's like when people ask, should I board up? You know, East Coast, this is not an East Coast storm, so no need to board up. But like, if it makes you lay in bed and feel more comfortable, I'm not gonna stop you. If you have the accordion shutters where it's super easy, I'm not gonna stop you. I'll tell you if, you know, if I think you should or shouldn't. But at the end of the day, especially Monique being in an older mobile home where, you know, is it tied down properly? You know, you could go down the list, right? You know, it's not the worst idea, especially, you know, if you're laying down and you're concerned. Let's ease concerns. That's the whole goal of all of this, right? Which is more accurate, the European or the GFS? The European historically has been more accurate, but in this state of the race, we're just kind of trying to watch to see where they come into focus on, okay? That's where we're at. Nobody's out of the forecast yet. There's 2 scenarios that may play out, and we just have to see how this progresses and which scenario plays out, okay? Laura, talk about weather in South Carolina and North Carolina for this weekend. Probably rainy. I'm a Central Florida meteorologist, so I'm going to focus on Central Florida, though. All right? Neither one of these are favorable for Ocala. Well, I think that it's just, they're different impacts. One would put us into a more direct impact. One of us would keep us out of a direct impact, okay? Carolyn, in school, we called it model hugging, when students would cling to just one model's forecast. Agreed, yeah, right? It's easy to see it and to go wild on it, so we have to watch that. Becca, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's like the windshield wiper effect. Yeah, Jessica's asking, what is a windshield wiper effect? It's when the models just do this, because that's what they're going to do. Each time they're going to focus in, and you know, you'll see a little of this, a little of that, but That's what the models do, all right? Art, what are the wind speed predictions for Osceola Eastern Track? I mean, if it takes that eastern track, all of us could be talking about hurricane-type conditions, right? So that would not be good. Ryan says, I'm in Havana, very windy today. Oh, interesting. I mean, it makes sense. You're about to get hit with a hurricane. Yeah, all right. Think of the Euro and GFS as two eyeballs in Wayne's World, camera 1 and camera 2. Perfect way to look at it. Yeah, perfect way to look at it. Would this storm be worse than Irma? Too early to tell. We're still early in the game. Think about it. This is Monday. We're talking about the worst of the weather being like Wednesday night into Thursday. So we're starting to key in on it, but we're just not there yet, okay? Let's suppose we are going to be impacted by the Euro model. Should we put shutters up in Sanford? I wouldn't think so, Viviana. This is not, for our area, seemingly that kind of a storm system. I mean, you know, if it takes an easterly trek, it's possible, but you know, yeah. Mike says both of these scenarios are bad for Tampa. 100%. 100%. The water piling up, that storm surge is a gross concern, okay? Yeah. Storm surge in Sanibel, Loretta's asking. Significant. This is the storm surge product. So for Sanibel Island, 6 to 8 foot water rise. Yeah. All right. How do the current steering patterns look to be setting up? Is the trough looking stronger or weaker? I still think that the models are trying to chew on that. Laura, thank you very much. I appreciate it. How wide is the storm? 400 or so miles? Yeah. Do you have a weather radio to listen along if the power goes out? Do you know channel numbers? KIH 63 in my house is the transmitter, but I don't know in your area. All right, I've got to go do TV. Be the sunshine in someone else's day. We are going to continue this. We will have more live coverage through the day, okay? Laura, last question. Laura's asking, should we get shutters up in Orlando? You don't need them, I don't think, but if it makes you feel comfortable and you've got the time, look, I'm not going to stop you. But I think that the West Coast should be considering shutters. And I would be willing to bet you'll see later today, I would be willing to bet that you'll see later today evacuations. All right, I've got to go do TV.